Thank you, Chairman Yarmouth and Ranking Member Smith. Secretary Secretary Fudge, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Housing shortages have locked many families out of homes across the country, especially first-time buyers. My district is facing these same housing shortages, but because I represent a rural district, housing development can be more complicated. Rural areas lack the infrastructure urban areas have and can't quickly produce tract housing with 25 starter homes without a significant investment from local resources to make sure that they have electricity, water infrastructure, broadband, and so forth. So the community block grant, communities in my district rely on the community block grants as a flexible source of funding to compete and complete some of these projects. The congressional justification also includes $295 million increase on the revitalization of deteriorating or deteriorated neighborhoods and places with the greatest need. These funds are separate from the old formula used to calculate the usual allotment of these resources. The justification says that the allotment of these dollars would be at your discretion. Madam Secretary, how much of the 295 million CDBG dollar increase will be utilized in the rural parts of our country?
Well, I think if you take into consideration that about 14% of all of the dollars we use for public housing, et cetera, it goes to rural communities, I would think that we would look at how much really goes. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but we know that it is significant because we know that a significant number of people who live in rural communities are already receiving HUD resources. So the one thing that I say to people who ask me about rural, HUD is not a rural or urban area particularly. HUD takes care of all people who need housing. And certainly the rural communities, I believe, in the past have not been always given the resources that they deserve. And I'm certainly willing to take a look at how we can make sure that that doesn't continue to happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Secretary Fudge. I greatly appreciate that because we really struggle in rural America, as our communities continue to reduce in population and stuff like that. And the infrastructure costs are just so significant that we need all the assistance that we can get. One other note on the subject of rural broadband, HUD's congressional justification notes that the public housing program and the Office of Multifamily Housing will focus on providing broadband to families of underserved communities. Broadband access is a major priority for me and my rural district in Iowa. Will these initiatives provide any focus toward rural America? If so, how? And I know what you said earlier, but I'd just like you to, if you could relate this now to broadband, I'd greatly appreciate it.
The language of the bill actually directs a lot of it to rural and underserved communities. One of the things that I knew even from my days on ag is that one of the things that farmers talked about was broadband. One of the things that people in rural communities talk about is broadband. So know that we are going to spend a significant amount, probably more, in rural communities as a percentage, as a percentage of the total, because rural communities have less access. So there are two main populations that don't have broadband, rural and inner cities. And so the bulk of the resources are going to go to those two places.
Well, Secretary Fudge, I really appreciate that. You think of rural America, and this is where the struggle again becomes, especially when we talk about education, online education. We really struggled through the pandemic. And then also telehealth. A lot of people are traveling 30 to 40 miles to a hospital right now, and broadband can be the difference maker when we create telehealth. So I urge you to look at this. I think it's such a critical asset for rural communities. With that, thank you for being here, and I yield back.
Thank you. And I would say that we are not going to continue to allow kids to have to go and sit in the parking lot of a McDonald's or at the library. We are really going to do everything we can to be sure that communities that you're addressing have the kind of broadband that they need.
I'm so grateful for those comments. Thank you.